Alright, today we're going to talk about the zones of sound on the rifle. These are areas on the rifle and what kind of characteristic sound they produce if we use them. And then we're going to give you some tips and tricks to kind of make sure that we can draw out as much sound as possible. So, if you're looking at the rifle, we have a couple of different major points where sound can be produced. And by far the loudest that gets utilized the most often or handled the most often is the area just below or at the band. This is, if we take the band and we loosen it just slightly, not enough that it'll come undone, this becomes an area where the rifle is actually the most resonant because you have the most amount of moving pieces at this one location. So what we want to do is we want to loosen the band ever so slightly. In other words, we don't want it loose enough where it's kind of wobbling around or where the screw might fall out. But when it's loosened slightly, the handguard gets a little bit more play and we're able to get a little bit more sound production out of there. You can see that we have this tape here. That's kind of our fail-safe. If this band were to fall off, the sling is still firmly attached to the rifle with this tape, so that's very important. A lot of people like to keep their hand at the balance point of the rifle. Regulation port arms is obviously here, but when we go to exhibition port arms, if we do this right and really seat this screw down tightly to hold the rifle together, this is one of the quieter areas on the rifle. And although the sound you get is a little bit fatter and a little bit wetter because of the surface contact area to the back of the hand, there's a little bit more space for that hand to hit. It's going to be a little bit more quiet, and that's why we kind of like this position for our port arm and for our regular strikes. Gives us a little bit more quality of sound out of here versus the tighter sound right here. Other areas of the rifle, we have the middle of the upper handguard. This is the loudest point in the rifle. It's just handled a little bit less than the position by the band. What we want to make sure that we do is keep our upper band a little bit, just again, a little bit looser so that we make sure that that's not clamping down so tightly on the upper handguard. Other things that we can do, you can kind of see it here just slightly. We have the handguard just shaved ever so slightly down so there's a little bit more space. If you happen to have a Drill America rifle, that space is built in there naturally by design. And that's going to give that even louder of a sound when we go to bring the rifle down. So keeping the bands a little bit looser, not to the point where they might fail, but just to give it a little bit more play, that's really important. Other areas, the small to stock is definitely a quieter sound, but it's also a sound that we can utilize if we're looking to fill a beat out or fill a count out. We can use that to get a little bit more sound out of this. One, we want to make sure that we're working the rifle, really getting the internal components of the receiver loose, just through drilling really hard, hitting the rifle a lot, and that sort of thing. But we can also keep this back screw just a little bit looser. We don't want to have the receiver so tightly clamped down that it's actually constricting the sound from kind of resonating in the stock. So if we have this front screw nice and seated, we can have this rear screw a little bit looser. Again, we don't want it to fall out. We can use a little bit of Loctite on the end and bring it to the point where it's not totally clamped down. And that's going to give us a little bit of resonance in the receiver area when we hit the small stock. Obviously, the last point of sound is the butt plate. And if we strike the butt plate on the ground, we want to make sure that it's the back area, the back corner, the heel of that butt plate that's striking the ground. And to get a little bit more resonance out of it, we want to allow our grasp to go a little bit loose. Again, the release of the back three fingers as you come to the ground, gripping high on the rifle for a comfortable arm positioning. That's going to help the rifle ring, and it's going to give us a more full and open sound versus holding on as tight as we can and trying to force the rifle onto the ground. That's really going to choke off the sound of that slam. So we pull back just slightly, we release and loosen up the grasp on the back three fingers. And as we come to the ground, aim for that strike zone in the back corner, and that's going to give us a nice open and resonant slam. So those are all the areas of the rifle and kind of what we can do. We want to avoid taping anything down too tightly or cinching anything down too tightly, kind of like we discussed. But we also don't want to go to the point where the rifle is going to fall apart or fail on the drill floor, hence why we have our different tape points to make sure that does not happen. So hopefully that's helpful, gives you an idea of how we can kind of modify the rifle and how we can use the different areas to produce some sound when you're making your sequences. If you want to check out more, definitely stop by Drill Team Dynamics on either YouTube or social media, our Instagram or our Facebook, or just visit the website, drill-dynamics.com. And don't forget to check out, we have a brand new offering. It's called Drill Studio. These are all online drill resources. And right now, The cool thing is we just released an Armed Exhibition Masterclass. It's 30 plus instructional videos, tutorials, things that your drill team of a beginning to intermediate level would need to know to kick their game up. And we're going to go further than that. We're going to do unarmed exhibition. We're going to do color guard. We're going to do a bunch of different things to bring some of the things that we do on site with Drill Team Dynamics onto your computer or onto your mobile device, and that way you have resources in your back pocket when your team or when yourself, when you're out there kind of training and working. So make sure to check that out. That's drill-studio.com.